All right. Good morning, folks. Thank you so much for joining us today. Over in the Digital Weather Center, I'm News 6 meteorologist David Nazario, and we have a lot to discuss, a lot that is still up and coming, and a lot of dramatic adjustments that could very well continue on through the rest of the week. Now, I'm sure on social media, whether it is you tune into us specifically over on Instagram, on TikTok, on our YouTube channel, as some of you are tuning in as well to my left hand side here, or if you have other weather sources that you follow over on X and all the other social media platforms, you've probably heard a lot of talk of a potential winter storm that could be firing as far south as the Gulf of Mexico and then working its way towards us. To tell you the truth, right off the rip, we've had a pretty substantial adjustment in one of our global models. So do not be surprised if some of our data looks a little skewed. And this is expected to happen. You know, we get a level of consistency with some of our models, and then sometimes one small piece of the equation, since models are just math, goes awry, and next thing you know, you have a totally different solution on your hands. We have to stay the course, and we still have to watch closely as we go hour by hour. And it's only one model, one run, so we're going to get into all that here momentarily, and I'll break it down for you lovely viewers. So good morning to those of you joining us over on News 6 Plus, as well as over on our YouTube channel. I see Kevin Hawthorne over in the YouTube chat. Good morning from Lakeland, Florida. Always good to see you in the chat. Let's go ahead and get started. We're going to move into our headlines first and foremost. This upcoming weekend is going to where things are going to start to get a little busier. So far this week, we're just tracking our next front. That's going to be the kicker for today, tomorrow, and Friday. Then by the weekend, the rain returns with some storms possible because of that first system that is expected to drag a bunch of that frigid Arctic air down from up north across about 75% of the United States. Then from there, next week, we're watching the Gulf closely. The dynamics and the ingredients for a hefty storm system are going to be there, regardless of what one or two model runs say. It is something that bears watching, and we're going to continue to do that as we go day by day. I've been watching it feverishly, hour by hour, and just to kind of give you some proof, cracked open Old Reliable here. I've been good about my energy drink consumption, but because the weather's busy, I'm busy, and I'm just trying to stay busy for all of you folks out there watching closely for the latest on your pinpoint accurate forecast. Here's a look at the water vapor. We're going to always start with the water vapor, the big picture pattern. You can kind of see if you look up there over northern central Canada. There it is. There comes our next storm system. You can see it coming down to the south, moving through the Dakotas, Montana, Wyoming, getting into the upper Great Lakes right now, that dip in the jet stream. You can see the shades of blue moving from the northwest down to the southeast before looping back up towards the northeast. That is our trough of cold air that's going to start to drape everything down towards the south. Unfortunately, if you look down over California, because there's a lot going on with their wildfires right now, they are not getting a break. They are not getting a break at all whatsoever. I have the image stopped here so I can draw in. Here comes our next trough with all the Arctic air there. I'll draw an A in the map there so you can see it closely. Then down here over Southern California, we have an incredibly positively tilted, we'll call it a feature in the pattern. It is an extension of a trough. However, it's breaking off from the main jet flow. You can see the main jet flow is back up in through here, meeting up with our next system that's going to be plunging across the Great Plains. And as a result, our Santa Ana winds are still rocking down there in South California, Southern California. And if you want to go check out a little bit more information on that as well, head on over to clickorlando.com. I have an article discussing what the Santa Anas are, a little bit about cross-barrier flow, downsloping winds, and then Chief Meteorologist Candace Campos is going to be doing a Candace Explains to give you a bit more of a visual representation of what downsloping and the Santa Ana setup looks like and why it'll never happen in Florida. And there's one key puzzle to it. One key puzzle piece as to why it would never happen in Florida. Can we have fire conditions? Absolutely. But we'll never have a Santa Ana setup in Florida. We'll see who out there heads on over to ClickO and kind of finds the needle in the haystack. There's only one prime piece as to why it won't happen here. Now, moving over to the upper level setup, I'm a little worried that this has changed with our most recent model data. So this might look a little different even for me. I have to kind of, I guess, watch this leading up to our live discussion a little bit more feverishly. This way I don't wander into a stream and then it's like, oh, hey, yeah, it said 40-mile-an-hour winds. Now it says 5. And to tell you the truth, that could very well be what happens here in a second, because our American model, the GFS, has all of a sudden decided to pull the rug out from underneath us and has changed its setup dramatically. But there you can see that bubble of cold air that's broken off from the pattern right there that we were highlighting on the water vapor. This is now going through the back end of Wednesday. And you can see the main area of jet activity has now reoriented, kind of reconstructed itself, moving through Montana, Wyoming, and down through the Dakotas into the plains before moving back towards the east with our current trough that extends out of the south over the eastern half of the United States. I'll clear the ink out of the way and we'll continue to move through time. You see that system gets picked back up, and that is also what helps to instigate our next major winter system. Now that is just about locked in. We're only about 3 to 5 days away from game time for that feature to develop and this plunge of very, very, very frigid temperatures to come south. And you can see right there, by the time we get into next Monday, this is the back end of the weekend into early Monday morning, we have extremely cold temperatures for much of the United States. Not going to quite make it down towards central Florida, to tell you the truth. We might miss the mark on this one. As old Get Smart used to say, missed it by that much. Our frigid temperatures are going to be where you primarily see your pink, fuchsia, and violet colors there. And then notice down in Florida, we're still kind of in the yellows and the very light oranges down there, which is, in my opinion, a bit of a bummer. I wanted to get a bit of a taste of this dense Arctic air, even if it just be for a day. I know a lot of us out there would have to grin and bear through it and layer up, but I, for one, was interested to see exactly what this had in store for us, since the United States are in a huge rigmarole waiting for this to happen. And then I also want to turn your attention, and I'm going to be very obnoxious about this. I'm going to get my pen tool out one more time. I want you to look at that. That guy right there, another little weak bubble, a tiny bubble of cold air. In this case, a little baby bubble of cold air that's broken off from our jet stream, because that is what could pay dividends in terms of what happens next. As I fast forward the clock, notice how it rips through Baja California. And then there's a couple things happening here. I'm going to go slowly through time. Notice how there's a weird kinking effect going on right there. You see that? How our contour lines, the white lines here, or the gray lines, I should say, they kind of get closer together, then they expand here, and then they kind of spread apart there and arc back towards the north before finally shrinking back down again. Those are called major shortwave features. We have long wave, which would be like your long trough that brings the cold air down. And then you have like this ridge, for example, would be a long wave ridge. Look at how huge it is. It extends from the Mexico coast all the way up to British Columbia. These shortwave features, as the name implies, they're a lot shorter in amplitude. And this is what is coming through the pattern. And I'll clear the ink and go very, very subtly through time right there. Notice how now they have all met up. We have just a full extension of a trough now over the desert southwest, getting into West Texas and the Great Plains. And then if I fast forward a little bit more, here comes more of that cold air into a very deep trough axis. This is still our previous run of the GFS, and this thing went bonkers. That means our model data has not yet updated here just yet. So this is going to show a very intense setup for Central Florida. And we'll get on over to that here momentarily. But first, here's another look at your temperature outlook, courtesy of Climate Prediction Center. Still looking at very, very, very well below average temperatures. You can see up in the top right-hand corner there where the legend is for this chart. Right here, I'll go ahead and draw it like this. Oh, what's going on with my links? Why is it showing up for you guys like that? If there's somebody in the YouTube chat, oh, there it goes. Never mind. Disregard. I don't know why it was doing that. On my side, it looked totally fine. That was weird. A little ghost in the machine. Maybe there's something on the fritz out there, and that's why even the computer models are like, oh, wait, whoa, trying to get their bearings again. If you look at the legend up here, and there I go moving the screen. I'm so sorry, guys. If you look at the legend right there, we are as far below as we can possibly go in terms of their color scaling. Now, it doesn't mean I've been seeing some folks. I'm going to take myself big screen here for a second. I've been seeing some folks on social media really hyping this up. the United States are going to be minus 60 below freezing. It's like, no, if that were the case, you may as well classify us into a new ice age, because we're not getting out of this one. That's not what's going to happen here. But in terms of the climatological norm, the historical norm, this is going to be the coldest dose of air for the winter season. And I'll go ahead and take us back over full screen so you can see the temperature outlook. And notice, again, that gradient of blues across the Florida Peninsula. So we will know that Arctic air has returned. However, it won't be as intense as some of our neighbors up there, even into the Florida Panhandle, where they could drop below freezing. And we see that gradient really establish itself right over the upper portions of our viewing area, getting up towards Gainesville, Ocala, the Villages, maybe going back towards the east near Daytona Beach, Flagler County, St. Augustine. Right up and through there is where you're probably going to see just a little bit of that bleed over between our modified air over the southern peninsula. Miami, Fort Lauderdale, you're not playing ball. You're going to be on the bench for this game. It looks like you guys are going to be staying in the 60s, the 70s even during the afternoon, whereas here in Central Florida, we're looking at the mid to upper 60s perhaps, low 60s in some areas if you get a little more of the cloud cover with all the moisture that's going to be in place. And then the further north you go, those freezing temperatures are going to be present. And with that being said, we're going to take a very quick 2-minute break, and it is very quick. I'm going to take a sip of my Celsius, and we're suddenly going to be back. That's how fast the 2 minutes goes, and we'll dial in exactly what some of the computer data is suggesting could occur after this weekend, which is where the blast of cold air is going to come down, what could manifest itself in the Gulf of Mexico. So don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be right back. And we're back. That was no kidding, a very fast 2 minutes to tell you the truth. I looked at my phone, checked a couple text messages, checked the socials, which, by the way, if you have the means of doing so, make sure you are following the News 6 Instagram, TikTok, X, Facebook. Follow my own personal information as well, WX Center Nazario, for all of the latest weather information. I update and upload vertical videos, content on a regular basis, if not a daily basis. So if you miss out on the live streams here, you can count on me being present on other apps with all your local weather information. And if you have friends or family elsewhere in the United States, I cover those bad boys too. So now these are going to be our projected wind gusts, and you'll notice that towards the back end of this chart, I have a giant caution label plastered across the screen, and there is a reason for that. And it looks like the GFS this morning has given me the perfect excuse to keep that caution banner in place. So as we go through time, this is local now. We're going to get into the weekend. You can see that next system finally begins to take shape as we go through Friday morning. Obviously, we're just going to feel the difference in our winds here in Central Florida. Very calm as an area of high pressure sits just to our north, kind of near Jacksonville, smothering the state of Georgia. You can see in Georgia, there's no wind whatsoever. That is an indication that there is high pressure sandwiching the state from above. But then you can see on the left-hand side of where that high pressure would be located, we're talking right in here, folks, as well. You can kind of see the winds wrapping around it in that clockwise fashion. Look at the wind tunnel that's opening up over the Great Plains. That is our next system. Now, again, this is the 6 Zulu iteration. So take the upcoming wind forces with a grain of salt. You can see here, as that first system comes through, this may actually stick. And the reason I say that is because we are still projecting that we are going to have a pretty bona fide frontal system with that Arctic air come through. So I would say, regardless of what the models are showing for that second system today, especially if you're an aficionado of anything weather forecasting, and you like to go look at the models on your own leisure, despite what's happening in the models today, we could still very well see with that first big blast of Arctic air, wind speeds anywhere between 25 to 30 miles an hour, gusting upwards of 35 in some spots. You can see Jacksonville getting into tropical storm force strength out of the south with that system, which I'm very curious to see if Storm Prediction Center brings up a potential isolated severe risk. I think it's doable, but we'll have to wait and see exactly how much of that instability we can see rushing in from out of the south. That is a very strong southerly push of winds. You can see them all screaming out of the south from our neighbors down in the Caribbean and the southern Gulf of Mexico, which is where all of our warmth and our instability is currently present. Then from there, you can see the model clears this out. There's all the post-frontal winds behind the system, which is going to drive more of that cold air to the south. And then per the earlier model run, here comes that next big old system. And then watch for it. Here comes the caution. There it is. There's the caution, and you can see as that system rips across the southeast, Jacksonville up to 45 miles an hour, Central Florida looking at just shy of tropical storm gusts with that system. And again, look at the caution sign and understand that this has changed. I was going to mention prior to getting myself up to speed for this live stream that this could change. It has changed. And you know what? I can go ahead and show you the latest information because it kind of looks very interesting, to tell you the truth. And I'm not a fan of how it keeps getting pulled back in time. But regardless, it is something that we are still going to keep watching. So let's slide on over the screen share. So this is that first system, and as you can see, I'll switch over to the winds down at the surface level, and the winds are still going to be gusty. Winds are definitely still going to be gusty as the system comes overhead. You can see the 5,000-foot winds gusting anywhere between 50 to almost 60 knots. You get a little bit of that translating down to the surface, and you're looking at anywhere between 20 to 30 miles an hour where we can feel it down at ground level. Maybe a little bit on the occasional higher side than that. Then after that, if I switch us over back here, there goes the first front. All that cold air sinks to the south. There goes that next system that was supposed to develop, and that's why I do think this might be just a bit of a fluke in this model run. It happens all the time. If you guys recall with Sarah was plastered across every which way you could look to blast through Central Florida as a Cat 4, and we all know what happened there. But then this is where it gets really interesting. So that, whatever this is you want to call it, it's not an organized storm system. It just looks like some sort of an interaction over the warm waters. Then by Thursday, that's when this system starts to come through. So the model still has it. But from a meteorologist perspective, I'm not a fan of how this just got pushed back in time. Will I continue to report on this? Yes. Am I still going to let you guys know to watch closely what happens over the next 7 days? 100%. But does this help my confidence in the forecast? Absolutely not. So does the model still show something big? And that is pretty hefty. That could possibly be a thunderstorm, if not a severe weather event for Central Florida. Look at all that cape you have in there, the good old instability. I bet you the mid-level winds are screaming. Yeah, look at that. That is a very intense setup for Florida. So am I still going to be watching this? You can guarantee it. If I switch over to, say, the Canadian model does, in fact, still carry that winter storm through. There it is. Still has it there. And then, as a matter of fact, it even starts to show what the GFS has later on down the road. So the Canadian model looking a little bit more gung-ho to keep things flowing. Move on over to the German model. The German model does also carry that storm system through for us as we go through the middle portions of the week. So right now, confidence aside, the GFS is an outlier currently. Now we might have the potential of tracking 2 upcoming winter storms for the Gulf Coast states and us here in Central Florida, but we're not going to start to dial in threats, impacts, or a timeline until we're into the weekend. I would comfortably be able to air that stuff out to you on social media and here on the News 6 Plus and the News 6 YouTube channel. Once we're about Saturday, maybe into Sunday timeframe, we can really dial in this forecast and work together. I'm very curious to see what our European model has in store for us once we get to around 12:30, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We'll go ahead and segue back over to the link system. Here's our national wind chills right now, and you can see Florida sticking out like the sore thumb that it is. If you love the spring, if you love that pseudo summertime-like feel, take a trip on down towards Miami. Might be a little chaotic down there, but you can see Miami right now is still feeling like 73 degrees, shorts and t-shirt weather. Here in Central Florida as of right now, still feels like 58 outside, and then you can see those frigid temperatures with that current trough up over the Midwest and the Great Lakes, with the rest of the United States blanketed by a lot of those sub-zero feels-like temperatures. Okay, that's the kicker. And then finally, before we get ready to close out the discussion, this is tracking the frost and the freeze. So there goes that first trough you saw highlighted on the wind chill temps. And then here comes the main event coming down like a lava flow you'd see out of Hawaii. Reaches across the eastern half of the United States with some sub-zero temperatures the further north you go. And you can see that that freezing level does make it as far south as just to the upper periphery of the Gainesville area, kind of up towards Perry, Florida. Very reminiscent of the 2023 and 24 hurricane seasons with Idalia, I don't know why I said that, with Idalia, and then last year we obviously had Debbie and Helene that came ashore right around that same general point. Now we're switching gears months later to freezing temperatures and possible wintry conditions. And then beyond that, you can see because this is the earlier model rendition, there goes that next slug of cold air that does, in fact, try to make it all the way through to Central Florida. But this is very much so up in the air, so take that with an enormous grain of salt. So, key takeaways here. We still have a lot to watch. I'm sure you have questions out there. I'm sure that you're wondering exactly what I'm wondering right now. What does next week look like for us? And truthfully, as Chief Met James Spann over in Alabama would say, we just don't know yet. There really is no skill pinpointing a winter storm of this magnitude this far out. There really isn't. You can kind of put a blindfold on and throw darts at a dartboard and see what sticks where. But regardless, the trends are our friends. I'm just quoting all the notable meteorologists today. And the trends do suggest that the dynamics and the ingredients will be present for a winter storm. Now we just need to see if Mother Nature decides to tap in and play ball with us. So thank you all so much for tuning in over on News 6 Plus. We'll see you again tomorrow, same time, same place. And thank you all for the lovely audience that we've had today over on the News 6 YouTube channel. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, and you're watching from News 6 Plus, or if you are on our News 6 YouTube channel, both groups, if you'd like to come over to the News 6 YouTube and drop a comment in the comments section down below, upon the conclusion of this live stream, we'll get back to you at our earliest convenience. But until then, have a great rest of your hump day. We will see you all again very soon. And you know the catchphrase. This is the Digital Weather Center signing out.